Hello BookTube, welcome back to my channel. My name is David, and today we are going to come back with yet another bookshelf essential. I feel like I was slightly beaten to the punch on this one actually, and so the timing, oddly enough, I was mulling over doing this one yesterday, but I ran out of opportunity to have time to do it. So my plan was today or tomorrow to sit down and do this one, and lo and behold, Steve Donahue, over on his channel, has been also doing some bookshelf essentials and featured the same book. But before we get to that, so Bookshelf Essentials is a series of videos that I came up with on grabbing a book off of my shelf that is one of those that is always going to remain in my collection. That if I were to trim it down just to my favorites, the ones that I want to not only have on my shelf to see that I've read them, but that I want to go back and reread probably all of my life. At least that's the goal with these. These are the ones that are absolutely, if I could only keep one shelf, these are the ones that would start to fill up that shelf. And most of the time, that is a single book that I'm choosing. However, in certain instances, it's going to merit having a series of books. I did that earlier with the Hyperion Cantos by Dan Simmons. And today, I'm taking a step back further in time to a book that is a lot older. A book series that is older. And that is the Barsoom series by Edgar Burroughs. Now, why my thoughts differentiate? You should go watch Steve's video. It's outstanding. It explains so much about the background for the books. And he's lived with these books for all of his life. These stories have been with him for decades. And the same can be said true about Michael K. Vaughan. He has been an Edgar Rice Burroughs fan for a long, long time. And so you might suspect, rightfully so, that either one of them has got a little bit of rose-colored glasses when looking back at this series, which begins right here with The Princess of Mars. I can tell you, as a reader who discovered these about a year and a half ago, well, it was about 2 years ago when Michael gifted me this set, but I started reading them about a year and a half ago, and I've now read all 11 of them. I finished them in 2023, and I enjoyed absolutely every minute of it. These are not big books. Most of them are under the 200-page mark. This one is 159 pages, and a lot of them run right around that mark. So the kind of book that you can read in a single day, if you dedicate enough reading time towards the reading of that, you can knock any one of these out in a day if you so choose to do so. At the very least, you can probably knock any of them out in a normal reading week, or at worst, a normal month. Like, it's easy to, with 11 books, knock one off a month and get through them all in a single year. And Steve mentions that if you give the series a try and read Princess and Mars, you might just find yourself swept up into the whole series, just like he did. And I will wholeheartedly agree that if this book doesn't win you over, if it does not sweep you up, you probably won't get swept up by the rest of them. This is not necessarily the best of the books, but if the premise and the characters and the world building just aren't doing anything for you, there's not a lot that's probably going to change along the way to affect that in a more positive way. But these are wonderful stories. So there's kind of a trilogy here with A Princess in Mars, with the Gods of Mars, and the Warlord of Mars. And it could be argued that these are the three best books in the series. That if you were going to give this a fair shake, I would say you should read these 3 books and probably Thuvia, Maid of Mars, which is book 4. This set of 4 here is extremely strong. There are other strong books later in the series, but the quality kind of ebbs and flows, like you would expect. I mean, any writer over the course of an 11-book series is going to have parts that aren't working as well as others. Look at Robert Jordan, for crying out loud, and The Wheel of Time. A bad book here is 2 hours worth of your reading time. A bad Wheel of Time book is like 2 months of your reading time. You know, there's a lot less investment in time in any of these for ones that maybe aren't jiving quite as well. But the sheer imagination on some of them, you know, the Chessmen of Mars reimagines chess in this world where the people are playing and their lives are on the line. That they are moving the pieces on the map, and you know, if you get taken, you may not survive. You know, it goes into weird places. Steve mentioned the Island of Dr. Moreau, and this is the book where it starts to go in that direction. The Mastermind of Mars, about Ras Thavas, who is able to come up with ways of sustaining life. Which, of course, only problem with that is everybody on Barsoom, that's the name of the planet Mars that they have for the planet. They all live to be hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. They are long-lived. They also go around with a lot less clothing than you see here. What you see on this cover is probably a little closer to the amount of clothing they have. Although it does say that the only clothing they really wear is the harness. A warrior harness there. You know, and you know, even on here, I mean, it's a very small harness in this one. Looks more like a kind of a scabbard attaching to the belt. But, you know, it's interesting to consider all of these grand ideas. You know, you've got the Fighting Man of Mars, where there's oh gosh, I'm drawing a blank on the word there. Where there are people that sell themselves as their swords, their services as fighters, to go in and do things. I think it's Pathen, something like that. Padwar. It's getting late. I had the word earlier today, but you know, it follows really interesting things along the way. You know, you've got Swords of Mars, which is more fighting along the way. This is the authorized edition. You know, Synthetic Men of Mars, where Ras Thavas makes his return, and he's making Horbads, which are very disfigured, grotesque people. They're super strong. You know, think one of the benefits that John Carter has on Barsoom is that the gravity is so much lighter, so he's able to jump far. He's much stronger than his frame. And so these creatures are equaling the balance there. They are strong. They're designed to be strong, but they're ugly because their stuff is always in the wrong places. The other real gem in here, if you can get this far, is book 10 with Lana of Gathol. This one's outstanding, which has 4 smaller stories within it. And then John Carter of Mars, which has 2 novellas at the end. And all of these, I mean, there's not one of them that I would not keep on the shelf. They are all essential to my collection because of the characters, the story, the imaginative depths contained within. You know, this right here is the size of maybe 2 books in a big, sweeping, epic fantasy or science fiction series that would be published today. You've got so much contained in here. And Burroughs was really, really good at delving into the action sequences. He's giving you enough to make you engaged with the world that's been created, with all the races that inhabit this world, the culture that surrounds them, and you get a lot of that flavor in the background as you're going through the series. But it is not the focus at all. He's not trying to describe to you their daily lives and functions, the societies that are going around, the deities that they worship, or anything like that. He's here to tell you a great story. It's got a lot of action. There are a lot of people that end up in distress and needing saved. There are continuously rising stakes. He has to continue to find ways that this guy, John Carter, who traveled from Earth, is how he's able to continuously be challenged even after he's a warlord of Mars. Part of that solution in some of the books is to follow somebody completely different, whether it's a child of John Carter or a grandchild, or another Earthman that happens to end up on Barsoom. There are a lot of different paths that get charted through. Enemies range from being able to be invisible, to getting super strength, to even having a monstrous, supersized giant, and armies of basically kind of skeleton-like figures at the very end. If you enjoy just a really good read that you can just pick up at any given time and just jump back in without needing to have catch a lot of intricate layers and threads, or to sift through an evening of reading and all of it is just plodding, slow-paced dialogue and world building that doesn't really advance anything at all. You're never going to be stuck with something like that in here unless you're reading like 2 or 3 pages. He knows how to keep you interested and engaged as a reader by rising and falling action points and plot points along the way. And it is a magnificent, worthwhile series. And so Michael and Steve are both absolutely right. This is a wonderful series. And I had no idea about the Edgar Rice Burroughs estate until Michael made his video Saturday with a package that he got from them, which wonderful to see that he's getting stuff from them. And I went looking, and I'm hoping they are nearing the end of redoing all of the Tarzan novels and what seem to be some really good quality hardcovers. And I'm hoping that they roll into Barsoom next. If they do, I will be getting every one of them, because these paperbacks are wonderful. I love them to pieces, and they can stand up multiple rereads. I mean, I got them all secondhand, and I've read through them all. I mean, some of them look a little rough on the spine, but not a single one of them looks like it is on its last limbs. But 20 years from now, 30 years from now, 40 years from now, my wife will probably hate these yellowed pages. And I mean, she already does. And they'll start to fall apart at some point in time. I do have ebooks of every one of them as well. But I still I can't ever see myself parting with this series. It's magnificent. It is, just a delightful read. And it's exactly what you need sometimes. And it is an absolute essential for my shelf. And, maybe between Michael, Steve, and myself, we'll convince you to at least give book 1, if not books 1 through 4, a try. The books 1 through 4 are the equivalent of a modern book being published today in most venues. Give it a shot. You might be entertained. So, there you go. That's all I've got. I will catch you later, BookTube.